last one. So make yourself comfortable in your chair. When it's chilly like this, I've been saying to people today, it's an encouragement to get the posture right, because the cold contracts, but the posture helps to expand. So, and just pay extra attention, especially if you've been outside or something like that. That chill gets in. Things will be a little bit stiffer and take a little bit longer to loosen up. But rubbing your hands together, tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down one shoulder. One. On the other side. Upper part of your chest. Your belly. And your legs. So into the reclining position. Feet out, letting your weight drop back in the chair. Take a couple of slow, gentle breaths. And just returning for a moment to this theme of sung, the releasing, letting go, the clenched fist softening up, and whatever image works for you. Another image sometimes used is of cats. And I think how cats have this habit, you're sitting in a chair and there's a cat sitting beside you, and then 10 minutes later you realize that somehow you're perched on the edge of the chair and the cat has somehow insinuated itself into the maximum space. And then they have this way of just flowing into space. And in the same way, see if you can, that idea works for you, this sense of your body flowing into the chair. This isn't the whole story with what I'm talking about, but it's often one that is emphasized in Tai Chi, and this is where the term relax does apply to Sung. But just think about it. This is the fist held tight, and I'm squeezing my fingers together, my wrist is tight, and so on and so forth. If I just relax, this is what happens. It flops down. There's no structure, there's no shape there, because the muscles are relaxed. It's quite a nice feeling in some ways, but it's not the same as from here to here. This releasing feeling helps you to maintain the structure. And so we start by releasing tightness and stiffness in the body. And when we come to the upright position, we start to use the muscles again, but we use them in a different way. Another example for me, and this is not a traditional example, but is with a tent, and the way the guy ropes and the skin of the tent and so on work. It's an image that I've used with all of you before. But in this position, we can also appreciate things like our breathing, perhaps. In this position, with the softening, the relaxation of muscles in the belly and the solar plexus and the chest, then we can start to get a feeling for this deeper breathing, this abdominal breathing. We also get a stronger feeling of our weight dropping down, because there's nothing stopping it dropping down. So there are various things about this position and about that aspect of some relaxing that are quite useful to recognize and then bring into the bigger picture. So now bringing your feet in, come into the more upright position. And I tend to have themes, you would have noticed. Some weeks I talk about one thing, some weeks I talk about another. And not trying to imply that they're somehow distinct. or that one is better than another. Much of it is a reflection of my own practice, what I'm doing at the time, where my thinking is. But what we want to be able to do is to think of them as a whole. They're components of the whole thing. So rather than separate entities, they're like a kind of extended family interacting with each other. Some can help you to drop your center of gravity. But dropping of your center of gravity can also help to encourage the sense of sum. You might decide that it's what you want to think about at the moment is the focusing of your attention. And a good way of focusing your attention is to focus on your hips and your feet sinking into the ground. The absence of that feeling of sung may make you realize that you're not focused, and so on and so forth. All these ideas interact. And in our own practice and with the experience you have, the thing to do is, by all means, listen to what I'm saying if I'm saying a particular thing, but also bear in mind what you want, and particularly in your own practice, bringing in the appropriate parts of it. Like in terms of the extended family, you might not ask one person to come and help you do something in your kitchen, do some repair work on the kitchen door or something like that. But you know that Uncle George is a dab hand at that sort of thing. So that's who you ask. They're all relevant at times. They're all significant or could be significant at times. But we want to, it's good to focus on them as individual things so that we can then start to make use of them. So with that as a kind of idea in the background, just slowly turn in your head. The flow of the movement is another part of that family. Can be a very immediate thing that feeds back to you. Alignment, structure is also important. How we develop that more focused attention. So it's not just an observation, but we bring in this notion of intent. We intend something to happen. The shoulders. And going forwards. Comes down to your sides. Rotating your arm. Feeling the opening and closing in chest and upper back. Maybe a little bit of a response in your sides as well. Winding around. And back the other way. And rest your hand. Easing forwards. Just focus your attention for a few moments on your back and your spine. And make sure that in the process of moving both forwards and backwards, you're not creating a kind of tightening. And then in particular, as you come back up, thinking about how you're coming up, using your legs and your hips ideally. And if you're feeling that tightening going forwards, think about, are you going too far forwards, or when you're not doing this, what we want to do is this. My whole head is going, my whole back is going forwards. But if I go from here to here, I get the start of that gripping feeling. Likewise, when you turn, the turn is in your hips and your waist, not just twisting your shoulders around. We're told that the movement should have a feeling of massaging about it. And in the other direction. And around. So here, I'm fine. Here, I'm starting to feel that pulling feeling. Remember, the movement filling the space that's available. And the creation of more space comes back to this quality of sum, releasing, allowing your hips to drop more, releasing tightness in your body, and so on. And then back the other way. And come back to the center. And then stepping out. And the other side. And just come back into the posture. And remember, although I'm forward in the chair, you might want to be further back if you feel you need that support. And then let your hands drop down. Now, bird folds its wings. Another aspect to the song, a little bit more abstract in a way, a little bit more obscure, but it's to do with the mind. I suppose one of the things you could say about Tai Chi is that it doesn't struggle, which sounds strange for a martial art. But it doesn't sort of go rigid, I suppose you could say. This is something that comes from the background philosophy to Tai Chi. There's a concept that is explored in things like the Tao Te Ching. The Chinese term is Wu Wei, and it's often translated as effortlessness or actionlessness. A better translation, but a bit confusing, is the action of non-action or the effort of non-effort. That's not terribly helpful, I find. And then change into fisherman cast a net. Appropriate action, appropriate effort would be a better way of thinking of it. And so when, particularly when we get to, say, something like Part the Wild Horses Main, or a movement you're unsure of for whatever reason, we can almost feel ourselves kind of stiffening up for the challenge sometimes when that happens. Instead of that, that same quality of song, so releasing the need to do that, and rather moving from a more kind of intuitive sense, can sometimes help us. Once again, I suppose it's an example of mind and body not being separate things. When we talk about song, we're talking about a body-mind quality. And then rolling the ball. Here we get a little bit of a pull from our fingertips to our hips, along over the shoulders and down the back. There's that series of elastic threads there that just extend out and then draw in. And pigeon spreads its wings. So as we get to be more familiar with the individual movements and with the routines in the movements, then we can begin to learn about these qualities through the practice of the movements. Sometimes said the real teacher is inside of you, and what you're getting from your own personal practice. Pushing wave. Trying to follow the movement from moment to moment. Even though you know what's going to come next, trying to avoid that sense of anticipating it. punch with both fists. This one changing. This is why sometimes when I'm not doing it today, I'll count the number of movements. I might do 4 of each or something like that. It's another way of just drawing our attention in, because you have to keep counting. And polishing the table. Just recognize that the further your hands get from your shoulders, the more you're likely to increase this feeling of pulling and straining and gripping in your back and shoulders. Let them extend out gently. Don't lock your elbows straight for this one. One more on each side. And then rooting down, expanding, contracting. And the wild goose. Part in the clouds. Okay. Dragon plucks the stars from the sky. One more time. Pushing in two directions. Last round. Onwards extended, scooping the sea, looking at the sky. Grasping the tiger's ears. And then on the other side. And then grasping the tiger's ears. Passing the wild horse's mane into your right hip. So to mirror my movements forwards into your left leg. Try not to think of this as like your hands. Your weight is moving, your body is turning. And as you go forwards, imagine pushing against something with your shoulder. So there's a kind of idea, see if this works for you, that imagine there's a door in front of you. It really works better if you're standing. And it's got a spring on it. And what you're going to do is you push into the door to open up a gap, and then you just feed your hand through the gap. What this does, another way of thinking is if you were moving in water, it would be this part of your arm and your elbow, the side of your body that would be the part that feels the pressure of the water, feels the stronger part of the body, feels the yang part of the body. And it means that the movement isn't just your hands swinging out, it engages everything. And then we feel a change. Yang in the right side of your body changes to yin, and as it does, the left side of your body becomes yang. And if this is to do with that quality of internal strength, what it shows is that the internal strength isn't fixed. It's not, oh, I've got strong arms or strong back or strong legs or anything like that. Like our weight, like everything else really in Tai Chi, it is capable of movement to a point, to an area where it's most useful. And what moves it in the end is your intent. Focus through the physical center of your body. So one part of the movement at a time. We know what's coming next, but don't anticipate it. Now we're going to start with part of the wild horse's mane. However, we're going to go into the one that we did before Christmas, white apophis fruit. From this, rather than coming back, turn a little bit more, bring your right hand forwards, drop your left elbow down. Now pull back like you're pulling your fingers out of mud. Let them come over and down, more or less in front of your sternum. Turn your hands palm in as though there's a ball, or I like the image of a peach, that's the fruit. And then move forwards again into your left leg. So on the other side, coming back, one movement at a time. Drop your right hand down. Move into your left hip and turn, starting with part of the wild horse's mane. Put that opening in your chest, and then just let it soften and close, and see how that brings your hand and your elbow together. Drawing back, pulling your fingers out of mud, turn your hand palm in and forward. Back into your left hip. And go across into your left hip as you draw, into your right hip as you draw your left hand in. And then start the process over again. And again, what? Come over, my right hand sweeps down, but I move my weight into my left hip. See how that draws the arm around. White apophis fruit. So whether you're able to do it or not is a little bit secondary to the effect this has on the mind. We're trying not to anticipate. So you want to just follow my movement, which means you'll be very, very slightly behind, just a split second. Give yourself time to register what's going on and how to follow. With one more on each side. And then rest your hands down. Once again, rubbing your hands together. And tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder and your arms. And on the side. Upper part of the chest. Belly. And the legs. Good. Glasses up. So pushing your knees up. And around. In the other direction. Good. Okay. And then just a word about that idea, going back to Wu Wei and this idea of being in the moment. That can be quite a sort of almost nihilistic thing, not caring about what comes next. But there was one teacher, a guy called Ao Huang, who apparently talked about this, and he said that he used a really interesting idea. This is a stance called Strum the Lute, and this is what I'm told. I haven't actually trained with him. It's something I heard from somebody else. He said, when we're in a stance like this, we're sitting on the leg, and this is our root. Yeah, and there's it's a martial art. There's the imaginary opponent there, so that's like the root is the past. The imaginary opponent is the future. We're not ignoring either. And his words apparently were something like, you sit on your past, whatever it happens to be, the good bits, the bad bits, the mistakes, the successes, and you face the future. But where you actually are is in that particular moment. I think that's quite an interesting way of looking at it, because it doesn't cut you off from past and future. So being in the moment doesn't represent a kind of, oh, I don't care about anything that I've done or anything that might happen because I'm in the moment. It's rather a way of observing from the moment, both past and present, I suppose you could say. So it's a slightly obscure idea, but we can see when we're doing something like Why Tape Offers Through, you think, I'm not sure what comes next, but actually you wait until it comes. And then, oh, yes, I remember that. And then, oh, yeah. And sometimes, not always, sometimes that will kind of unlock the movement. If we're here and think, is it going to be left hand or right hand? It means that this is incomplete. And until this is complete, it doesn't matter which is the left or the right hand, that sort of thing. But we often race ahead. It's like having a conversation with somebody, and rather than listening to what they're saying, it's anticipating what they're going to say and already thinking about your response and your answer. So it's a way of paying attention to the present, I suppose you could say. So feet parallel and sinking down. And again, practice it with this little sequence, rooting down. And we know that we're going to go into the wild goose flying movement, but we wait until we finish this movement and then we go into the wild goose. And then into part the clouds. Beating the movement. And it's quite difficult. And I think this is quite interesting. It sounds like such a simple and really in many ways quite a lovely idea. And yet, you know, part of you will be thinking, oh, it's part the clouds, it's time for part the clouds and things like that. And when you get it wrong, you make the wrong movement or you don't do it quite as well as you want to or something like that, then it's also, you know, okay, you did it wrong. Can't change that. And it might give you information to do it better the next time. And that's always useful. You can't change the fact that it went wrong this time or that time before. Just one more round. Good. And then right foot forwards. So we start to cultivate a part of our awareness that is always in the present. So whatever else is going on, there's always a part of your awareness aware of where your weight is right now. Regardless of where you think it should be, or where you want it to be, or where it was, it's right now. And this again feeds back into an ability to settle your weight, to root down, to get that little pause in, that little punctuation that allows you to do that. Raising your toes and your heel. And then stepping in. And then on the other side. And then raising your toes and your heel. Stepping in. This thing about being in the moment is also something that you find as a component of meditative techniques like mindfulness, for instance, and relates to this quality of stillness and space. So there's something very important for our well-being there. And again, we don't ignore what else is going on, but we have this little sense of space inside us. Stepping through, one step at a time, one part of one step at a time. Foot comes in, forwards and down, heel goes down, toes, weight moves, and so on. So you're walking on thin ice. Change direction. You haven't done so already. Right foot forwards again. Fisherman casting net. Your arms just swinging quite naturally and quite naturally dropping down and then just rising up a little bit in a gentle curve. So that movement in your shoulder joint, that massaging quality in your shoulder joint. Sink back and turn. Again, your arms just gently rising up into wind blows the willows. The expansion up through the side of your body. A lot more prominent than it is with fisherman cast net. And the turning that swings your arms out is sort of accounts for that or stimulates that, which gives the arms a little bit of an extra push. And stepping in. Okay, and on the other side, fisherman cast net. So part of the value of practices like Tai Chi is that they do give us that little bit of space. Not just, in Tai Chi, I talk about it physically, but inevitably, we can spend a long time ruminating on the past, concerned about the future. I think it's quite legitimate to do that. but not all the time. So it gives us a break from that, this sense of just being here, being present. We get glimpses of that. I don't want to try and suggest that this is a constant state for me or for anybody else, really. Sinking back and turning. Feel the effect of that turn and the change that it provokes and promotes, cultivates all the way through your body. And then stepping in. Remember, you could add this little rotation there if you wish. Be very careful with your hip when you do that. The combination of the lift, if you may not even be doing the lift, and the rotation is quite strong. So what you might want to do is not lift, but just turn the foot like this. I'm exaggerating that, by the way, so you can see what I'm doing. And then stepping through in whichever way suits you at the moment. Letting your hips hang back, especially if you are raising your leg in some way. Remember that feeling of hips, buttocks, lower back overhanging, if that's a helpful image for you. And then going back. And then I'll show you that. Great, go back to your chair. We'll bring your chair back to you, depending on which way you've done it, I guess. So being able to come into that space, however you, again, imagine it, however you cultivate it, just gives you this little feeling of a release from what you've got to do next, or what you've just done, or what's going to happen tomorrow, or anything like that. There are only little glimpses, but they can be terribly important. And there's very good evidence with things like mindfulness technique. They can be a great help with mental health issues, with things like pain in the body and things like that. I think one of the most extreme examples I came across was a book by a woman who suffered a great deal from rheumatoid arthritis. She was also a lifelong meditator. And I remember at one point in the book, she said something quite remarkable, which is that she'd be going along the road and then knees would be hurting and it would be difficult going along the road. So what she taught herself to do was to focus her attention not on the knee that was hurting, but on the leg that was swinging through the air, because that wasn't hurting. So she could actually make a choice about where her attention was. The pain was still there. It wasn't dominating her at that point. I mean, obviously that's in many ways quite an advanced technique, but it's something to think about, I think, and it's one of the sort of less tangible benefits, I think, of a practice like Tai Chi and Qigong, means that the practice time You know, the class and your own practice time becomes a space where you don't have to deal with it with those things. And like with the, you know, sitting in the present, it actually prepares you. It actually gives you a better chance of meeting the future and drawing on the past, taking from the past what is appropriate. So just let your hands drop down and embrace tiger, return to mountain. Hips sink in, shoulders following, elbows and hands following the shoulders. Just settling down and then starting again. And rest. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much, everybody, once again. Just turn the recording off.